guys, Joss Satyat here in Singapore, and as always, thank you so much for joining me on the Night Owl podcast. You guys, as always, I get excited by life itself. I'm inspired by movies, by books that I read, music that I listen to, conversations that I've had, and I always want to jump on this podcast and actually discuss things that have occurred to me as as life kind of, goes on, especially in this time of COVID, quarantine, social distancing, all of that stuff. So we try to keep to ourselves, but thank God for social media, we get to keep in contact with everybody at the same time. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a conversation I had with somebody where they were talking about the fact that had a disagreement within the house, right? And for those of you who are familiar, there are sometimes these moments where two people don't agree with each other, they are not getting along, something happens, some miscommunication, misinterpretation, misunderstanding, and suddenly these two people aren't as close as they used to be because of this rift between them. And sometimes in a household it ends up looking like a cold war. It's like, people square off into their own corners or whatever. They don't want to run into each other, they avoid each other, they're not speaking to each other, they like look through each other, all kinds of stuff. But when that happens, how do you know when the situation is resolved? A lot of times we look for a conversation. We want to discuss what happened, pick it apart, understand what went wrong, how. But there are some moments where the people that we're not getting along with don't actually want to speak to you. It's almost like they need the time and the space to calm down. It's the way different people handle different situations, right? Some of us are talkers, some of us are not. Some of us beat ourselves up inside our minds. We're picking it apart by ourselves and wondering where we went wrong or what we did wrong and how come we feel so left out or distant from everybody else. Why do we see all of these differences? Why do we feel like we're not being treated fairly or whatever? So it depends on the person that you're in conflict with. How do they like to communicate? How do they like to resolve stuff? Do they need the space first? Because if you're the kind of person that wants to talk first, it's going to hurt you that the other person needs space first. But you got to respect them, right? You got to give them their process to work it out or whatever. And in that space of time, though, it can get very awkward. So how do we manage those things? What ends up happening? I know so many times where, my mom and I would get into a fight, or my brother and I would get into a fight, and I don't want to talk to those people after a while, but I also know that I can't go to sleep if I'm still in conflict with them. I feel really uncomfortable, and I get very nervous about whether or not they're going to take their love away from me. It's something that I have been afraid of since I was a child because my mother showed me that she was able to live without me, so to speak. She would live in the same house, she'd move around as if, I didn't exist and stuff. It was her way of showing me that she's still upset with me, but it made me feel like, oh, well, her love can be taken away. Her love is something that could stop at, any moment and I would be without all of a sudden. So for me, I'm one of those people that really wants to speak. I want to talk it out. I want to understand what happened, what went wrong. Not to convince you that I was right. None of that. Not at all. I just want to hear your piece of it. I want to know where I went wrong so I can rectify the situation as quickly as possible and go back to being cool with each other. You know what I mean? I've had this happen with, my live-in boyfriend when I first got engaged. I had this happen with my ex-husband, and they were all people who wanted to show the fact that they were upset with me, and so it would feel like a punishment. But how do I resolve that? For me, personally, it was one of those situations where I had to go and ask if we were okay again, or if I would attempt to do what I always do, like help them with something or offer to do something for them, or any of those, service, quality time, compliments, giving gifts, any of those things. I would try any of the love languages to see if they would fall back into that comfort zone of, okay, this is how we normally are. If they can go back to being the way they always have been, then I have some semblance of a resolution there. I don't actually get an apology, I don't actually get an explanation, but at least I can feel safe about approaching that person. So when I was talking to this client of mine and they were telling me, they have this situation, it's like Cold War inside the house, how do I manage it? I was telling them, a lot of times you want the explanation, you want the discussion. They may not be in that frame of mind to do that. It may be for your own peace of mind too. It might be for the best of both worlds, right? It may be one of those situations where they know if they speak to you right now, they're going to flip out, it's going to get bigger than it needs to be, and they're just going to keep it to themselves until they can handle a conversation, and then they will slowly fall back into a natural pattern of behavior. But while we're waiting, what do, right? It's very uncomfortable, it's very awkward, and sometimes the best thing we can do is approach them as gently as possible and try to go back to the way things were. And you can tell if they still put up a cold shoulder, if they're still trying to avoid you, whatever, you still know that there's a conflict going on. So sometimes you have no choice but to wait till the other person is ready. And sometimes just by going about your business, your daily routine, not to pretend as if nothing ever happened, genuinely generally you are a little bit more ginger about approaching, regular patterns of behavior or whatever. But at least if you try, you can show them that, hey, you're not holding any ill will, you're not harboring any grudges. Maybe they can feel comfortable enough to fall back into that pattern as well. So it's a trial and error process. It's not there's no exact science, there's no art behind this. It's kind of like trial and error. You kind of have to attempt and show them that you're loving still, you're still willing, you're still going to be there, you're not going to walk away or anything. Because there are those moments as well where people who don't want to talk so much are waiting for you to show them that, you're going to leave them like everybody else did. You're going to hold a grudge like everybody else does. And if you can, try your very best to show them that you are still available, that you are still willing to be a part of this relationship, whether it's a friendship or, a familial relationship, or even if it's a romantic relationship. Try your best to show them that you're still willing, you're still in it, you still love them, even if there is a disagreement, because let's face it, there's not going to be a perfect relationship where there's no disagreements at all. And to be frank, I don't want a relationship like that anyway. So if you have the chance, even if it's gingerly and awkwardly, to approach the other person and show them, hey, you know what, I still love you. We may not get along right now, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here. Maybe that will help them come out of their, their anger a little bit. Help them fall back into an understandable pattern of behavior, something that you're used to, so that eventually down the line, when they've cooled off enough, y'all can talk about it. But in the meantime, you can reset, the atmosphere in the house, because let's face it, none of us like conflict, none of us like awkward, none of us like being at odds with anybody else. I think we all want to just get along, and that's part of the reason most of us people please. So ideally, you get a chance to talk about it. But let's face it, everybody has their own way of processing problems, own way of handling their stress, and it may not have anything to do with you at all. You may have been the tip of the iceberg, but they may have been some underlying issues that were already going on in their heads. So the best thing you can do, if there's a Cold War situation going on, as awkward as it may seem, if you are willing, if you're able, try and show them that you're still around, that you're not changing your behavior based on the way they reacted or what they're going through. Give them the space, the peace, the grace to kind of come out of it on their own, and so you can have a conversation. But until then, at least they know they're in a safe place, that they can, express themselves the way they want to, even if it does end up with harsh words, even if it is lashing out because they're under some kind of stress. At least they have a place to let it go, but then they know that you have their back, you're still there around for them. Now, I'm not talking about abusive relationships, though. I'm not talking about people who do this as a means of controlling and manipulating you. I'm talking about people who genuinely are holding a lot on their plate, seem to be under a lot of responsibility, shouldering a lot of, stress. They also need a place to vent sometimes, and hopefully within a couple of days or whatever, things will go back to normal. But sometimes it helps for you to show them that you're still in it, that you're still there, and you're willing to hear them out. Because I think we all need that grace. What do you think? I would love to hear your comments. Let me know in the space below, and I will catch up with you again soon, you guys. Bye.